As a child, I spent untold hundreds of hours of my life staring and studying Jehovah's Witness artwork. Because I was one, not for like an academic purpose. The multiple weekly meetings were long and boring, car rides out in service, long and boring, conventions and assemblies, forget about it. And this was, back in my day, kids, when we didn't have tablets. So a lot of times what you would do to pass the time is you would just flip through whatever magazines, tracts, and books that you had in your little book bag, and you just kind of stare at these paintings and let them take you somewhere. So today I thought we would do that, just take a stroll down memory lane, look at some notable pieces of JW artwork, or maybe something you've never really thought about before, and really just kind of feel the vibes. What can we learn about Jehovah's Witnesses through their artwork as it's evolved over the years? I'm making it sound a lot more heady than it's going to be. We're just going to look at some paintings probably. Right, so I just pulled up jw.org, and on the front page there's a masterpiece. I actually wanted to focus more on like older publications, that kind of like 90s artwork. Watchtower's obviously had artwork since the beginning of the publication in some sense, but like when I think of Watchtower artwork, I'm not thinking of those two-tone little sketches in the like old pink Great Teacher book or anything like that. Like, no, I'm thinking like Bible storybook. I'm thinking those little tracts. And I am thinking stuff like this. This is actually a good place to jump in. This is a modern piece. This is probably from a Watchtower a few years ago. Probably like 5 years ago or so. And this is something I could check, but we're doing this for vibes. And, my feelings don't care about the facts. We want to explore this art and see what it makes us feel. This is a masterpiece. I mean, look at the amount of detail. So this is obviously Jehovah's Witnesses' interpretation of paradise. And after Armageddon, the earth will be transformed into a paradise, but not magically. It'll be like a iterative process where you, like humans, actually have to rebuild the earth and restore it to paradise conditions as it was in Eden. So that's kind of interesting. But you actually see that in this bit of artwork. Like, look at this. Okay, so we got some fellas building. What you won't see any of these guys doing is using a power tool. This was a real bone of contention for my dad. He's a carpenter and a really skilled craftsman. He's built many houses in his life, and he very much looks forward to paradise and building in the new system of things. But he always kept a close eye on this because he was very distressed at what you noticed here, which is like they're just using, well, this one's actually so blurry that you can't really tell, but in a lot of these newer pieces, like it'll show people building, and they very specifically are using like a hammer and wooden nails and a hand saw maybe, right? But they're just like building this out of planks and 2x4s and stuff, just building absolutely everything. You see something like this, that's going to take a long time without a drill bit. But anyway, this raises, some interesting questions about the new world that they kind of discourage you from thinking about, because there are a lot of plot holes with new world mythology. Watchtower, they have some printing presses. They're building a movie studio. They kind of have a farm at Patterson. Maybe this is the farm with all the horses and sheep over here. No crazy wild animals. We'll keep track of that. Where's the wheelbarrow coming from here? Like, where are they getting their clothes, actually? Because you gotta think, this is after Armageddon, and the families in some of these pictures are like literally emerging from the rubble of a big city or something. You gotta think you're gonna need some new clothes after Armageddon, but Watchtower doesn't have like a textile factory that we know of. So how are they getting these clothes? And the clothes, it must be noted, are very white and American and reflective of real 1950s ideals. This is a worldwide perfect paradise beyond your wildest dreams, but it's not like a playground, guys. This is business casual at least. Lace up your shoes and tuck in your shirt. Make yourself at home. And you know what? I think I was wrong about the like real wild animals, because look back here. You've got some elephants. This is interesting. Okay, so the men are working, and it does. Let's check this. It seems like it's all men, although it is a little blurry. I can't say for sure. What we definitely have, though, is there's a Bible study going on. The kids look like they're kind of having a good time, although the little girl's going off to do some work, it looks like. And this kid's still business casual. I don't think he's going swimming in that. Let's be real. None of us are here for the new artwork. We want the classics. We want my book of Bible stories. A couple things you might not know if you left the organization a real long time ago. They did a reprinting of this book, and the old version, this is not like hashtag not my Bible story book. But back in my day, kids, the Bible story book, the real Bible story book for OGs is yellow, but there's no pictures in the cover. It just looks like this wonderful old tome, you know? It really feels like an old storybook. And in this reprinting, you know, if you remember in the old yellow book, you know, back then Watchtower printed so much stuff, not all of it could be in color. So every other page, I believe, was in black and white in the old Bible story book. And the reprinting, you know, obviously they didn't paint them in black and white. At least I don't think so. That would have been remarkable foresight if they did. But anyway, kids these days get full color picture on all their pages. You know, what's next? A trophy. Oh, this brings me back though. I mean, look at this guy. Look at these guys. He's happy. This is a happy fella. Now, I don't know what book he's reading because that is not the cover of the Bible story book. It looks like he's reading like Old MacDonald Has a Farm or something. So this book belongs to, and this almost feels like a trick because you write your name, but then if someone steals it, they can be like, oh, okay, well, I thought you meant this other book in this little picture. I didn't think you meant the Bible story book. You know, don't sign anything you don't understand, guys. This book originally came out in 1978, and the art style, I think, reflects that, but maybe I'll get into what I mean by that later. Now, what you think of with the Bible story book, I think, is like almost surreal, slightly grotesque depictions of pain and suffering, images that are a little bit too scary for kids, but also like very bright, wonderful depictions of like paradise and the Garden of Eden, but it's not quite realism. There's like a flatness. I think of the people's lips a lot, I think, when I think of the Bible story art. We'll do a little lip check in here soon. What I don't think you think of is the very beginning of this, which is God begins to make things, and you're like, oh, okay, so we're gonna see the Garden of Eden. Nope. Sorry, kids. You are seeing destruction that looks like creation. I mean, look at this. This is like Mordor or something. This doesn't look like anything that exists or has ever existed. And I feel like this really suggests like an anger. And I feel like that's kind of the vibe that I got, and we'll see if I keep getting it. So far, so good. Is that there's a real undercurrent of anger and distress in the art of the Bible story book, but I feel like it really says something about the way Jehovah's Witnesses portray God, Jehovah, and certainly the way they were more overt about the cruelty of God in those days. But now I'm looking at this like smoke is green. The hell is this? Is it like toxic fumes? But no, the thing that really got me as a kid is not only the volcanoes blasting off and lightning coming down, but it's these motion lines of these what look like meteors, and I think they are, because look at this. This looks like it's trying to depict like a big rock coming down, angrily coming towards this like rocky, formless void. It's really kind of scary, and I always kind of conjure the image to me of God being like, bleh! Like, why is he so angry about making the earth? He hasn't even created enough people to be mad at yet. What are they describing to the children? The sun, the moon, and the stars, and the earth were not the first things God made. Do you know what was the first? Don't ask me if you're just going to tell me. God first made persons like himself. Jehovah's Witnesses love saying persons. If there's a choice between, well, people and persons are both grammatically acceptable here. It's persons every time. But what the hell are they talking about? We can't see these persons just as we can't see God. In the Bible, these persons are called angels. God made the angels to live with himself in heaven. I don't know about this. I'm gonna need a source on that. You know, I'm not a Bible scholar, but I do recall if you really dig deep into Genesis 1:1, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it does not go on to say, well, hang on a second. Actually, first, he made a bunch of invisible people. You know, in hindsight, I should have been dubious of these claims a really long time ago. Too long ago for you to check. An invisible guy, he exists, first of all, and he made this scary stuff that'll haunt your dreams. But before he did that, he made a bunch of other invisible people that you also can't see. It seems hard to verify. But this, now look at this. This is nice. You know, you go from this to this. That's kind of the duality of the way they depict Jehovah. This is a God who is angry, jealous, demands exclusive devotion, commits genocide, and, minor point, but also is it, though, pro-incest. I have a feeling we won't get into that, but, it's there. There's a lot of incest in the Bible. I think God's kind of fucked up for doing that. Now, I do just want to shout out, look at this. This lion here always seemed to be having such a good time. This is how I lay on the couch. And this guy's happy too, but look at this. This is relaxation. That's not what we're talking about. So are we seeing what I'm saying with the lips here? Like, look, these lips are very well defined. You might be thinking to yourself, the Adam and Eve were perfect. Maybe they're implying that perfect people will have lush DSL, but I don't think so, because we're going to be going well into imperfection, and they still got real and Twizzler lips on them. But another thing that I think is worth noting about this is, like, the flatness of the image. It's suggesting depth. There's obviously shading. They're adding dimension to, like, his forehead, like his frontal brain bone, to use the medical term. But, like, his eyes, nobody's eyes are that big. It is realistic, but it is not realism. It's not going for the most realistic possible depiction. Like, her hair, you can see, like, the rigid structure that they've kind of confined her hair shape into. It doesn't really feel as flowing as, maybe we'll look at some more modern depictions of Adam and Eve later. But I feel like that adds to even though this is not surrealism per se, it adds to the surreal quality and just kind of interesting vibe I get looking at this book, is it's like, it's a little bit more than real. I actually think that's kind of to Watchtower's benefit. It almost looks like you're looking at cartoon characters in a way, and I feel like I wasn't thinking of so many plot holes. I guess first of all when I was a little kid, but also when the pictures weren't so realistic that they naturally brought up a lot of questions. Now here's why, okay, I'm looking at the PDF, and you gotta do that because the website's a liar. If you click on the picture, look how it does that. It cuts it off. This is a liar website that is not accurately depicting the art of anonymous author, art department, row 3. Look at this. Like, what a fucking work of kitsch art. So first of all, Adam here, to me, looks exactly like Paul McCartney in the Get Back era. And I feel like his wife looks like Jenny Nicholson. His wife! Yeah, Adam's wife. What's her name? Ava. What? Eve. I think her name's Eve. It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Although one of these guys, between the two of them, are you telling me there's not a chance that one of them's named Steve? What the hell is on their heads even? But this is a really interesting piece, I think, because it's good, right? But it's not really good for a painting. It doesn't look to me like this is somebody who really has a love of art as a form and, like, the craft and the rules of, like, composition and shit. That what this looks like is somebody who has really studied propaganda art. And when you look at art like from North Korea and stuff, you see that this style comes up, this kind of flat, more than real, slightly surreal, slightly warped renderings of people, like almost idyllic depictions of the way you see people in your head, but not as they actually are. Although I don't know anybody that quite looks like that, I guess, other than Jenny Nicholson. These angels are so stoic that they almost appear more as statues than as sentient beings. Okay, this picture, we're not going to go through the whole Bible story book, I promise. I know it feels like I'm going like one page at a time, but this is like one of the images that I think of when I think of the Bible story book. Number one image is Jezebel, but this picture really, really upset me. I think because, okay, so unlike much of the art in this book, where the realism is more approximate, look at the face of this crying Aryan child. He has blonde hair. I guess they're trying to, it's almost like creating continuity or something. They're like, see, they could make blonde people. When is this, like, they weirdly believe that all the different races exist because, like, within his sperm, I guess, Adam had the capability of creating every variation of race that we see today. Race is stored in the balls. Anyway, so that's why, these two white brunettes with literally zero family history of brown hair are able to create a kid with blonde hair. But look how much more realistic his face is than any other face in this entire publication. Like, this is almost photorealistic. It's really upsetting. Like, it really is. It's not like cartoon kid crying. This is like the actual kind of like ugly distress that you feel as a kid. And even her, you know, she looks like an idyllic woman from one of those more like Art Deco style furniture magazines from like the 60s or 70s. She looks more like, you can see this very drawn figure where like every little curl in her hair is very sketched out. But he has that curly hair and it's almost wild to look at. But his face is so realistic, it really is disturbing. But I feel like, you know, that's what draws your eye in. I think when you first look at this, your eye, despite the composition of this being kind of wild and all over the place, like your eye immediately goes to this kid's terrifying realistic face. And that's kind of important, right? Because immediately from perfection, what you get is just turmoil and suffering. That's going to be something that they really emphasize a lot more than the good times in the Bible storybook, is the amount of times things just sucked for everybody. There's actually not a great deal of smiling in the Bible storybook, if I had to bet. What's happening with this child's head, even? It's so much smaller than his hair. I feel like if he stands up, the back of the weight of his hair is going to drag down his head. This almost has the effect of like in a video game, like especially like old polygonal video games, where like the more distant you would get from the camera, they would actually load a lower polygon model of the character, because from that far away, you know, it would look approximately like the character would up close, and you can't really notice. You can notice it now in like HD TVs, and this is what this almost feels like to me. This is kind of a fun thing to do with the Bible storybook. It's like, look at the people in the background who aren't the focus of the painting, because they almost always look like really cartoony approximations of people that like you would just kind of quickly sketch in the corner of your notebook. Like, what is happening with her shoulder? Weirdly, though, this isn't even the thing I wanted to talk about, the Bible storybook. The thing that stands out about this, you know, there's obviously a lot of anachronistic issues with the Bible, but you look at this and you think, okay, Adam and Eve here just got cast out of the Garden of Eden. None of their children are even grown up yet. They're not even old enough to do incest with each other yet, because that's what the Bible is honestly mostly about. So they're like in the hunter-gatherer phase of society. They're literally wearing loincloths. She's wearing a Wilma Flintstone skirt, and yet they don't live in like a cave or a deerskin hut or something. They live in a Ringling Brothers circus tent with stripes. They've already really developed an eye for composition and stripe. Figured out roofing structure's great. But you know what though? See, now that I'm looking at it, because this striped tent always weirded me out. It really felt like day 35 on our own without Jehovah, we're building the circus. I mean, we've already got half the animals. But when you really look at it, see if you can notice this. This, I think, they're saying that this is hair. Like, look at the really thin brushstrokes. I feel like they're trying to give the impression that what we're seeing is not actually a fabric, like tarp material, but like hair, like pelts that they've just flawlessly arranged into stripes. It's like they knew that, you know, 30, 40 years later, there was going to be some smarmy YouTuber that came around and be like, no, is this a circus tent? And they'd be like, ha ha, gotcha, idiot, it was hair. We do need to talk about Enoch. You know, Enoch gets a whole chapter to himself. I mean, it's not a long chapter. And look at this. It is. They move on from Enoch pretty quickly to the death of, what is this even? How is he dead? Oh, it's a knife. This is bizarre. You can't see the knife at all. You can see the blade and the blood, but there's no handle to the blade. Maybe he's using like a fucking like a tusk or something. And once again, you know, the suffering on her face, despite being one of these kind of smaller characters, they really made it so wrinkly. Enoch gets a whole shout out. Look at this pose of his. Look at the perspective on his hands for like 5 seconds without blinking and tell me something's not wrong with that. There's about 1,000 million things that we could talk about in the Bible storybook. And I wanted this to be kind of a short. Okay, so here's what the Watchtower artists really care about, right? They care about lips. You can see Jacob here. He's got thick-ass lips. He's ready. Look at that sheep. He knows the guy petting him's got big lips. The other thing they really fucking care about is arm hair and forearm sculpting. Because, like, look at the form on this. Like, this is so good. Like, the form on this is really picturesque. I tell you what, okay, you know what this is? This makes me think of this old edition of Robin Hood that my old school had. And it had, you know, like, the form of it looked exactly like this. It was a very similar style. They were so concerned with making this guy hairy. This chapter, I would go through this a lot. First of all, this pillow, never sour. I mean, I guess this is like an ancient pillow. I think I've actually seen one of these like in a museum or something. It really is like a thing that they would just like lay their head on this like formed neck holder. It's just wild to me that they would think to do that rather than be like, okay, well, we clearly have, you know, blanket technology. What if we put like 2 blankets together and lay our head on that? You know, maybe then we won't die at the age of like 32. No. Okay, well, I hate to say this, but I don't think we're going to be getting to any tracks. I think this is going to have to be a series because this is already so long. This is wild. Right? Like, look how grotesque they made these pustules and lesions and boils. I mean, it's awful. Like, this is just seeping pus. You know, he's got these eggs over easy boils over here. I don't know what's going on at the bottom of his feet. It's like filleting off. This is horrid. This is, I think it should be child abuse to show your child this picture. I think you should go to jail if you show a picture like this to your child. This is a good example. Well, it's a good example of a couple things. First, it's a good example of the whitewashing of this, because look how pale white the Egyptians are. Does this look like a person from Africa to you? It's kind of bizarre, actually. They gave her dreads, but they very specifically, like, coded her to be white. But look how, like, flat the composition of whoever the fuck this is, Queen Mommy Moses. Look how, like, picturesque and, like, Hallmark magazine this girl is. You know, this doesn't quite look like a real person. It's close to what a real person looks like, but nobody's eyes are quite that big. But look at this baby. This is insane. Like, this belongs on, like, a tin can of baby powder in the 1960s, right? Like, this is pure commercial art from this era. All right, one last thing in the Bible storybook. Oh, god damn it. I want to look at so many of these things in the Bible storybook. Tell me you didn't want one of these bad boys when you were a kid. I mean, they look like chefs. He looks like a chef. He looks like, you know, Chef Boyardee the White. After he's been destroyed by the Balrog, he rises with white hair and a bouquet for his alcoholic, red-cheeked Santa Claus brother with, by the way, very prominent lips all around. Nicely done, gentlemen. But this is what you want. The chess piece here. This thing is nuts. This reminded me, of course, as a little nerd, as, you know, Darth Vader's chest piece. So this is the picture I wanted to look at. But there's a couple things about this. Well, first of all, I don't know if I left the part in earlier because I've rambled quite a bit, but look at how sculpted and defined and lovingly painted this man's forearms are. I have to think to this day a large part of why I am, like, attracted to men's forearms is because of this fucking book, and why I'm self-conscious of my forearms, because they're skinny. I feel like I'm not living up to the Bible storybook standard. Now, I'm also wondering a little bit, does he have a goatee? I feel like this is just Napoleon Dynamite. I spent 3 hours in the shading on your lower lip, but it's hard to say. Lips. Look at how they really render him as quite a pretty boy. Now, he's got the same hair perspective problem as that boy from earlier with Adam's wife, as we know her, where I feel like if David stood up, he would immediately fall back and crack his head open. But this bear is always very upsetting to me, because it's almost playful, because he's got his tongue sticking out, so it's kind of silly. And I bet you just about anything that tongue was added in very late, because they must have been thinking, I don't know, this might be too upsetting for kids. This is pretty grisly. Give it a silly, funny tongue like a cartoon. But this injury here, you have this, like, very specific injury to his head. It's pretty wild looking.
And I just always thought that was so strange. I'm like, what did David do? Did he shoot him? And I realized, looking at this morning, duh, yeah, he did. He shot the bear with a slingshot. That's his whole thing. So they're kind of creating this continuity visually that David is really good with nailing sentient creatures created by Jehovah right square in the middle of the eyes. Yeah, they created continuity about how good he is at killing people. Anyway, the video that I've been working on, kind of like the big project I've been working on, is kind of like dark and depressing and triggering to work on. And it's more research and serious. And so I just kind of wanted some positive vibes to just kind of scatter the vibes around on the channel. And it's not often we get to say nice things about the witnesses either, and I certainly won't in the next video. But look at all the skill, look at all the talented people. It's a shame that they don't get paid, but I gotta think, if you're an artist and your whole dream is to like paint for a living, that's a pretty tough thing to do. So I mean, if you can get a gig where you have full-time work and every meal is provided for, and you don't have to pay taxes and you don't have to pay rent, and you're just surrounded by your friends and people who agree with you about everything all day, and also you get to paint, that seems like a pretty good deal when it's all said and done. That's kind of the impression it gives me. Like, it looks like the new Kingdom Hall designs that have these front-facing whiz nose